Yeah, so it is so funny how it all works. But the last question I sort of had for you, because we've been rolling on for a bit, but what has maintained the dialects in Great Britain in the age of the internet? You know, well, following the telegraph, as soon as you had TV and everything like that, and there's a lot of mixing of dialects, and you're getting exposed from everywhere. What's maintained the diversity of dialects that you have in such a small island?
I think they've been leveled to quite a large extent because I think 100 or so years ago, there was probably a lot less mutual intelligibility between dialects, partly because people weren't hearing each other's dialects as
Yeah.
much,
Yeah.
and partly because they genuinely just were quite different from each other. But recently, linguistic influence often happens as a kind of spread out from central points. So there are kind of waves out from, for example, from London. You know, there are kind of waves of influence that spread out. And I think that's definitely happened between my granddad's generation, my dad's generation, and my generation. There's been, you know, people ignoring Scotland because I think I can't. They're just off in their own bloody world. But I think within England, like the kind of fringe dialects, like Cornish dialects and Welsh, English-speaking Welsh dialects and Cumbrian dialects and Yorkshire dialects, Geordie dialects and things like that, have seemed to be the last ones who haven't quite been fully impacted by this recent wave of sort of London or at least southeastern dialects. Because like in a lot of the north of England, until relatively recently, for example, the vowels in stone and name were monophthongs. So stone was something like stone, depending where you were. Name was something like name. And that's that kind of thing still exists in Cumbria. People of my generation that I've met at university still have those kinds of vowel qualities. People in Yorkshire have those kinds of vowel qualities. The people in Newcastle are doing their own bloody thing.
You impersonate their accent, or
Storn, name, no. But people in, like for example, Manchester, where those vowels would have been monophthongal until quite recently. People of my age in Manchester pronounce them as diphthongs now because of this wave of London influence, and it's something that's I think there has been a big leveling. I think there'll continue to be a big leveling, unless maybe there's some weird movement to preserve regional dialect or something. Which
do you think it's something that should actively be preserved, or do you think you just sort of let it go the way of the dodo because language is language and it's really there for a purpose, which is communication, not necessarily as a social badge?
I think it's interesting to, as from a linguistic perspective, it's just interesting to record it. I would like if there was more diversity, just because it would be more interesting from a linguistic perspective. It would be cool to kind of, and I think people would see value in there being, and they're having their own local identity. I hope it wouldn't cause too much kind of in-group, out-group kind of aggression. I don't see why it would, but it would be nice if they were preserved. But if people don't want to preserve them, then they won't be preserved. That's the thing. If people don't see it as important, then it won't. Then it's.
I tend to be surprised that it's held on for so long, right? Because you would imagine that it's still, I think it must still be a big thing in Britain for your accent says something about who you are, where you're from. And it's something that you can show, straight away. So you can either lose it if you don't want it, but if you are proud of where you're from and want people to know that, that's a reason you might conserve it, I guess, too, especially if you grow up in a small community for the first 10 years of your life, and that's kind of solidifies, and then only later do you start traveling around.
Yeah, and then you start, I suppose, tailoring your accent to whatever's convenient, I suppose, because it's, as you say, it's a tool for communication. It's a tool for expressing who you are, and you might not want to be a certain person. If people in a certain area just don't want that aspect of their identity anymore, then I think it's their right to kind of shed it. But I think there's nothing wrong with...
It's interesting it hasn't happened more with, say, the Manchester accent or the Newcastle accent or Liverpool, where, for those who don't know, I guess they have the kind of stigma of being a lower class, working class cities in Great Britain, as opposed to somewhere like London, where you would have more received pronunciation, you know, the posh accent. And so you would imagine if it was going to happen, those would be the first places to be like, all right, well, we can just change our accent, and now we don't have the negative association with being from these areas or whatever.
Yeah, but it's an interesting one, actually. Like, because as you said, like Scouse accents and Geordie accents are preserved very, very well. Mancunian accents, I think, maybe less well, but still very well. I think it might kind of be that they are in some sense their own cultural centres in the same way that London is. So they probably have, like, I know Scouse has influenced surrounding like Merseyside and Wirral dialects, and there are people in northern Wales, northeastern Wales that speak with what are basically Scouse accents.
Really?
Just from that influence, and it's clearly something that's come from the city, because a lot of features of Scouse are very obviously Irish, sort of come from Irish features like lenition and things like that, certain vowel qualities, which comes from migration to Liverpool. So it's clearly an outward wave that's spread. I don't know much about that in terms of Manchester, or I think Newcastle pretty much that's just a variation of the northeastern kind of dialect continuum. I don't know that that's like a wave of influence situation, but yeah, it might just be because they're their own kind of centres of influence, but I don't really know what makes something a centre of influence, so I don't know if that's meaningful. I don't know.